Welcome to Circular Firing Squad. I'm Marty, a counseling faculty at Kent State University and host for Circular Firing Squad. We've got 4 members, 4 questions, and 4 answers for each question. Each squad member generates a question that we all have to answer, ranging from academic to abysmal. Let's see who's with us tonight.
Hi, everyone. Elliott Ingersoll, professor of counseling at Cleveland State University and host of Apply Topically.
Hi, I'm Stephanie Martyr, a doctoral candidate at Kent State University and practicing clinical counselor.
What's up, everybody? My name is Mitch Conrad. I am a third-year clinical mental health counseling student at Cleveland State University and practicing counselor at Baldwin Wallace University.
Okay, Elliott, you've got the first question.
All right. Are there any Thanksgiving plans, menu items, any related holiday ephemera that you're excited about?
Yes, actually, I'm glad you asked. It used to be that every other year or so, my mom's cousin, and then it used to be my mom's cousin and her mom, but then it was my mom's cousin and his more recent wife, would come visit. We have a small family, so it's my dad and my mom and me if other people don't visit. And, I really don't need to have a 4-hour dinner with my parents 2 nights in a row with just myself. Then luckily I met Mike and he got dragged into it, so it was like a little better. And it's nice. It's not bad. It's just like not the big shebang. But then this cousin and his wife are supposed to come every other year. 2 years ago, when they were supposed to come, they couldn't make it. There was just some stuff that they had to attend to. And then last year, I don't know, I think something happened again. So I'm very excited that this year they are planning to join us. And Louise and Alan will be joining us for Thanksgiving. It's just more fun. She's very gregarious. She's like in theater. From New York. I mean, they both live in Stamford, Connecticut, and he's really smart in engineering and stuff, but she just like everything is theatrical when she tells you a story. So it just makes Thanksgiving time more fun.
Was she in like theater in New York City?
Yeah, not like Broadway or even, probably some off Broadway, but also like community, but like high level. I'm sure she's done a lot more too. She was married to some big Wall Street person for a long while before she became a widow. So, but she was also very smart and very independent on her own. I just wanted to add that she didn't need a big Wall Street banker at all.
So this is sort of a public service announcement for me specifically. I've come to the conclusion that I can actually do whatever the hell I want on Thanksgiving for the first time in my life. And this conclusion has really brought me a lot of freedom in deciding what to do on Thanksgiving or not to do on Thanksgiving. And so admittedly, I do have some family gatherings that are generally what I would consider not necessarily like what I would want to do on Thanksgiving. And there's no shame or anything for, my family in that way. However, I'm trying to not engage with things in my life that I do not want to do. And in that way, sort of like protect my own peace, but also like if I'm spending an entire day doing something that isn't like preferable for me, like why am I engaging in that? Because for the last 30 plus years of my life, right, like Thanksgiving is a mandatory kind of event, right, that I'm expected to be at. And because of that expectation, I determine, I go to Thanksgiving. And I think I've mentioned on here before that like Thanksgiving isn't necessarily my favorite holiday. Planning to spend time with my family on Christmas this year. or I should say like just like kind of like later in the winter break, spending time with my family in Nebraska. But for for me, I'm like really trying to get away from like if I don't if I don't necessarily think I'm going to enjoy because I typically don't really thoroughly enjoy like the tradition my family's traditions on Thanksgiving. I'm yeeting out of there, right? Like I'm just protecting my own peace. I'm like gonna go and like have my own fun, decide what to do, right? Hang out with whether it be like a Friendsgiving or something like that. That's really what my plan is at this point. Kind of excited to just be like, you know what? I'm out on Thanksgiving, right? And maybe I'm surprised that it took that's how I feel. I feel surprised that it took me so long to get to this point, but I'm excited to do what I want to do for Thanksgiving this year.
Okay, this could go on for a while for me. And it's nice. I'm glad Elliott sent this question in because for me, there's a great story for this. Thanksgiving, since we have been married, my wife and I, Aileen, has pretty much been at her sister's in Carbondale, Illinois. Sister was a faculty member there and married another faculty member. And so she would always have Thanksgiving. So we would travel from here to there. And I love her family, and I really do. They're a lot of fun to be around. They're all good people. We don't have any crazy uncles or things like that that get in the way. Um, so everybody gets along really well. However, I'm getting more and more kid averse. Now I can say this because they don't listen to the podcast anyways, but there's going to be lots of kids there this time. So that's one issue. But they have a tendency, they started this tradition of doing Thanksgiving and then having a talent contest afterwards. Well, they don't call it a talent contest anymore. But each member of the family or pairs of members or the kids get together and do some talent. So over the years, I've heard practice speeches from kids. I've seen PowerPoints from kids. I've seen like bad comedy routines. This is all part of their Thanksgiving experience. I sit in the back of the room and try to keep my comments to a minimum, and also pray to God that it's over quickly. Um, so that's part of the plans. There's no way around it. The way I have gotten out of having to participate in the talent contest is the meal the day after is my talent. So everybody, uh, waits to find out what I'm going to cook for the next day. And I did some standards when we first started out. And then I started getting inspired by something that I had during the year on my travels. And it's like, I'm going to make that. So I've done Turkish once or twice. I've done some other meals and have done um, things like I went to Memphis and found this really good restaurant and had chicken and waffles. So I made chicken and waffles for the night after. And just stuff they don't know what's going to be on the menu, but it's pretty weird. But they like it. I mean, they wind up liking it. That's the best part. And they're not being kind. They wind up liking it. So last year I got recipes from the Dead Celebrity Cookbook and made a whole meal of dead celebrity recipes without telling them what it was. And then we did a trivia contest as a group afterwards to determine what was the item they had and whose favorite celebrity was it. I managed to get in Matthew Perry, which was, some people felt it was too soon. But nothing's too soon with me and the family. So this year, I just got to bug up my butt to make tamales. And I've never cooked Mexican for them over the 30 years or so that we've done this. And so I'm going to turn it into a whole Mexican thing. I've been practicing tamales. Um, and so far, they've worked out pretty good. And then I'm going to do, because we're going to have a lot of kids, I'm going to do a taco bar. I'm going to try and get piñatas for the kids to break open. And afterwards, we're not doing a trivia contest, but we're going to do a game, and it's going to be Taskmaster. So I am doing the after meal entertainment as a game of Taskmaster with teams of in-laws working as teams on different tasks. And I've already embedded some in-law family tasks in there. So like pantomime the most embarrassing story from your family's history. Little tasks like that. And so we're gonna have some fun with it. So yeah, Thanksgiving winds up being a big deal. I always get told that I need to cut down on stuff, but that's just not the gensiest way. So it's going to be a whole kind of Mexican. I'm going to do street corn and I've got to figure out a dessert. So it's going to be a whole Mexican thing followed by Bresnan Taskmaster.
I want to go to Thanksgiving at your house.
Mhm.
We have like six people sitting around the table listening to the one person who's not related to us in any way entertain us. Like that's what we are hopeful for every other year. So,
Well, doing the cooking during the day, occasionally I get some folks to help me, and that's great. I used
mhm,
to have my kids do it with me, but they kind of let me know that they're there to relax. They're not there to be my sous chefs.
mhm.
So I'm doing some of the tamales ahead of time, freezing them, and then we'll do them there. But I would love to have you come, Steph, because it would be one non-relative that I could talk to. And the kids, they're so open, and it's like, stop crying. It's not my problem. Get away from me.
I won't bring Nora.
Yeah, well,
Good answers. I was thinking of there's a Life with Archie series where Jughead accidentally gets kidnapped by Mexican desperados and tamales play a central role in the narrative. But no spoilers here. We're excited. I'm excited. We're gonna host 13 this year, and we're doing two turkeys. We're doing one Wednesday and one Thursday, and we'll reheat it all. But it's going to be great because we'll have as many of my cousins as can come, and my niece and my sister and her husband and my great niece. And the fun, I get to be the crazy uncle. That's me. So that's the fun part for me. So yeah, we're looking forward to it. It's been a long time since we had a house full on Thanksgiving.
That's nice. And I was curious if that Archie was part of a double digest because those were
Oh,
the best.
yeah, no, this was the magazine format. It's over here somewhere. I can dig it out, but yeah,
Okay,
it might
yeah, but
be shown up in a digest later.
okay, yeah. So that always made my trip so fun to the supermarket in Publix in Florida when I visit my grandma because she would always buy me whichever Archie, Jughead, Josie and the Pussycats. All right.
I loved
But
all of them.
oh good, right? Addicted. Um, well, my question is, how counselory do you act in your real life?
Love this question. I guess I was thinking of it in two ways, sort of on a spectrum of like how counselory are you versus not counselory are you, or as even another kind of like follow-up of like how counselory are you, right? Like, are you doing CBT with people out there? Are you doing person-centered therapy kind of based interactions? I suppose it depends kind of like what type of counselor that someone is that would matter for this question. For me, I don't. I don't intentionally try to act counselory, and yet I understand that the way that um, I feel like the way that I've been trained, and also the way that I just kind of communicate because of that training now feels better. And therefore, when like I'm interacting with people who are also like, and so I mostly do like kind of like person-centered stuff, right? And so it's a lot of like kind of like non-directive forms of talk and communication and um, and so a lot of that has been kind of like implemented into my life as well, where I'm sort of like never like telling anybody, oh, they should do something or suggesting or directing because it doesn't feel good to me when that happens to me. And so, like, is that counselory or is that just like a different form of communication? I wonder. Um, because that's kind of like what our profession in many ways is, right? If we're not using sort of like I'm not out there using like interventions with people, like pulling out worksheets at dinner. Um, but I do observe that the way that I communicate with people is much, it seems to be much more affirming. I hope that's and more attentive. That's the one thing that I feel like isn't necessarily like counselory, so to speak, but like I know that practicing like has made me a better listener for sure. And so like even if I'm not necessarily like doing something specific like counselory, um, I'm also kind of engaging in a lot of the behaviors that we do because a lot of the behaviors that we do like can feel really good, right? Like especially when it's not viewed as like intentional that I'm trying to like solve something for someone or like fix something for someone. Like that's not the intent. The intent is really about like wanting someone to feel listened to. And so or wanting someone to feel like they are heard, feel like they're listened to, feel like they're affirmed, feel like all that kind of jazz. And I don't think that's something that only counseling gets.
When I first saw this question, I said, "No, not at all." I'm kind of a sarcastic son of a bitch, and I like to bring back points and jab a little bit at people. And this is in real life. I interact in a much more symbolic way. And then I realized, yeah, I kind of do that when I'm a counselor too. So maybe more than I expected. Particularly listening and hearing something someone says, recording it in my head, and this in counseling and in real life, and then circling back to that in the conversation, whether it's with clients or um, whether it's with friends or colleagues or whatever. So I'm inventorying all that stuff that generally comes out of someone's mouth and then bringing it back up when it seems most useful. So I guess that's counselory. I also like to change perspectives on people. So I don't know if that's a reframe, but often people will put something forth in a position, and my reaction will be like not argumentative, but will be here's a completely different position or just a completely different point of view. So they're looking at it at one point of view, and then I shift focus to another place. And from another place, it could be a completely different point of view. And I do that in real life, sometimes for humor and sometimes to make a point. And I definitely do that in counseling. So initially I would have said, "Oh no, I don't do that. I don't get into that, that catcher's position that we have, where we sit in a chair and we lean forward with our hands open, like we're ready to get the next fast pitch coming in." Um, I told myself, no, I don't do that. In fact, I don't even do that in a counseling setting. I'm probably pretty sloppy with my body language. But the more I reflect on it, there's probably more of me that either bleeds into the counseling or more of the counseling that bleeds into me.
Yeah, I like this question too because I realize the older I get, what you see is what you get. And people who've known me for decades, they can track 4 to 5 personae that I've worked with over the years, and they're all kind of collapsing. And I have a theory that my tribe, our lives get divided into thirds, and I'm entering the last third. And in the last third, I think all these lines collapse. A, because it's just too much effort to maintain them as if they were separate personae. That's a fiction. And B, I love seeing what happens when the batter gets whipped up.
Hmm. Yeah, so thank you very much for your answers. And I think it depends on I think to your point, Mitch, like which way, because I think there can be different ways also that maybe that counselor actions can come through. But to the way Elliott was talking was kind of my original thought, or maybe you too, maybe everybody was kind of this way, where really when I got counselor, counselor educated, that I really just I got the vocabulary and maybe some more drawn out concepts that were fully fleshed out that matched what I felt and thought. So it really kind of gave me more a way to describe the things that were already going on inside of me. Or the way that I responded to people, my community, the things I'd want to say or the things I want to bring out for people. Like the concepts made sense, the theories made sense in certain ways. It gave me that language. Um, but then at other times, I find myself, I think it is just me at this point. It's not like I enter a different way of thinking. But for example, I had a friend and they are going through jobs and they did a mock interview and they said, my mock interview was a car crash, LOL. And I wrote back, well, it revealed where you had opportunities for growth. Like,
The
I mean, I did a
airbags.
smiley face, like I know this is like cheesy counselor talk, but also so sometimes it just leaks in that way. It's a little tongue in cheek, but also, we're really, if I was doing like true counsel, I'm like, yeah, what kind of car crash was it? What kind of, tell me more about that car crash. Not necessarily reframing it at that moment, but I don't know, just stuff like that kind of leaks in and I reframe in the moment, but I think that's just me. But now I have a lot more of gooey, cringy ways to say it.
I'm thinking about that a lot, that sentence. I have a lot more gooey and cringy ways to say things. And I'm like, gosh, I'm thinking about now all the times in my life in the past where I've said some pretty gooey and cringy things. But anyway, let's move on. How did you get interested in counselor education? Let's go.
How do I get interested in everything I do in my life? Somebody pisses me off. I have been doing clinical work for probably about 16 years, straight out of undergraduate into working in addictions and then working with severely mentally handicapped kids and working in clinical mental health counseling centers and then working in EAPs doing counseling. Um, and one of my positions that I took was dealing with severely emotionally handicapped kids, at-risk kids in the state. And I spent a lot of time with the state going to seeing the kids when they'd run, I'd be out on the street looking for them. There was a lot of kind of direct service that we did that was beyond sitting in a chair and trying to do any type of counseling with them. But ultimately, we would get together in Columbia, South Carolina, and make decisions. And it was basically the state agencies attempting not to pay for service. And that just frustrated me because they're putting a lot of energy into not having to take responsibility for these kids. And so I got frustrated and I decided I was going to go into counselor education or go into some related field where I could have an impact. Um, and so I got into counselor education program at that point. It probably wouldn't have ever led me back to straightening out the state agency. But that's what led me into counselor education. I knew I wanted to be in higher ed. I knew I wanted to teach someday. So that just seemed to be the point where to do it.
Yeah, see, that's where I come in. I think I shared this on the podcast. From a very early age, I had an intuition that I wanted to work at university. I was looking at those varsity tablets at Barnes Pharmacy outside of Youngstown. It just grabbed me. And then in high school, my football coach, who was also teaching the intro to psych, told me he had a brother in higher ed. And he said, you'd probably do well in higher ed. And I didn't share the second part last time I told the story, but he said, because Ingersoll, I can't imagine where else you would work. And I thought that was the best career guidance I'd gotten. I mean, it was just like, yeah, you're right. And then, so I got my master's. I was working with people. I liked that, partial hospitalization, addictions. But ultimately, I wanted to get into higher education. And I got accepted to a couple psych programs, and it was disastrous. I mean, just imagine, if you know me, as I can be a bit, what do you call oppositional? I mean, these people, they interviewed you in a shirt, a jacket and a tie, and they're always white males behind a table. I felt like I was Bruce Willis in 12 Monkeys being interviewed by the psychiatrist. So I had a couple of experiences like that, and I agonized over it. Then I met my mentor at Kent, and he was really the main reason, Ansel Volt, the reason I got into counselor ed, because as Marty said, I knew I wanted to work in higher ed, and there's multiple paths there, but I needed to do it as me, and he really gave me a lot of space for expressing my authenticity. And I was a bigger jerk then than I am now. So God bless him, boy. He sure was a great influence on me.
I realized I could do it and it was a good fit, as at least as far as getting into counseling. Um, you know, bachelor's and first master's in psychology, then a little brief half stint in law, and then getting a job doing in-home family therapy. But I wasn't doing in-home family therapy, it was CPSD. But I mean, CPST, but at the same time, it basically was, except technically didn't diagnose. But I mean, really, if you were doing your job, you were conceptualizing and, saying if, and whatever. They could pay us less because we didn't have a license. But and the truth is too is that they let us go because when we had the two programs, there was also a licensed program. So then they let the non-licensed people go. Okay, makes sense. I saw it as that opportunity to go back. And if I'm going to go get a second master's so I can take the licensure exam and always have a job, then I always have I never knew before that I would actually have a path after law school didn't work out. I didn't know if I was going to have a path to teach. And so then it kind of presented itself and it seemed like a great idea at the time. And so I really wanted to be doing that. Now, at this point in my life, it's might look a little different, but I still want to be involved and I still want to participate and, you know, be able to use what I'm spending so much time working towards. And at this point, I've invested at least a third of my life into this, if I do the math. So let me make something of it, please. Thank you. I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, I appreciate everybody's answers. Thank you so much. You know, in regard to like some of my, I suppose my just like general interests in counselor education, it primarily does revolve around education about how to provide psychedelics within counseling. Um, Additionally, I have certainly some experience kind of like being in the mental health care field as a client for 20 plus years now. And I've also observed and heard about other stories that other people have shared with me about their experiences being in the mental health care field. And I admittedly on the other side of this, starting kind of like in like CSU's counseling program, I admit that I feel highly surprised about where the field is. I thought we were a bit further along, if I could be so blunt. Um, the amount of stories that I've heard, and those are other people's stories to tell, right? But also the things that I've experienced inside of counseling that worked or did not work, as as a client, in terms of, right, like what are the different therapy modalities? What were the benefits and limitations of those therapy modalities that were not shared with me? What were the benefits and limitations of psychotropic medications that were not shared with me, right? And other people also going through this, and sort of like the idea for me of something like, for instance, like we talk about like informed consent. Informed consent is garbage. What clients deserve is well-informed consent. Because what we don't really give clients inside of our industry is well-informed consent about the benefits and the limitations of particular therapies. And additionally, in my experience, clients, and through hearing about experiences of others, clients are really not able to make a lot of choices. Counselors, psychologists, and psychiatrists sort of determine themselves much of the time, selecting particular therapies and not providing clients with, right, like things that are inside of our ethical code, right? The idea of autonomy, the idea of non-malfeasance. Um, and it sticks out to me. This stuff really does stick out to me because um, sometimes I hear stories about what's currently going on either at like sites inside the area, that, right, like colleagues are currently working at, sort of like what they're asked to do by clinical supervisors, what some of their experiences are with levels of support, and additionally what they're sort of experiencing in therapy. And this is like really concerning to me sometimes, the things that I hear, sort of outside maybe the scope for tonight. But I've wondered about how to like use that knowledge and those experiences that I've had and that others have had, hearing about those stories, and about providing a more ethical and client empowered form of counseling, right? Like our definition of counseling is the idea of empowerment. And so my question is always, when are clients disempowered, right? And when are clients empowered? Empowerment to me, right, like one of the things there is, right, like allowing clients to make choices about their own therapy and determining like what they want to talk about, when they feel comfortable talking about it, what interventions that they want to use or not use, and providing like a really detailed, approach so that people can make well-informed choices as opposed to, hey, we're going to use CBT today, right? I think that the time for that has passed. I don't think that I think our profession can do better. And I think that people, especially, right, like importantly, not just clients, but people deserve a lot better than they're currently receiving from our industry in many ways.
All right, so I'm going to move things around a little bit. Not move things around, but kind of ask a question that's related but not related. So let's remove anything that's academic
Mm.
or job related as a challenge. And what is your next non-academic or non-job related challenge? Something that you have to face or something that you would like to learn?
This was a very timely question for me. Um, One of the duos I played music in, we were together 18 years, and we just got together again today after 18 years of being apart. And he's been working on some really amazing country tunes, and they are perfect for double bass. And so now it's really, this is the time I've had surgeries on both hands and wrists. It's called distal scaphoid excision. But getting back to playing the double bass, I'm hoping I can do it. I've done all the exercises to strengthen everything, but we'll see. So yeah, getting back on double bass, and that's what we're gonna try next Sunday. So I'll find out sooner rather than later.
Good luck. That's exciting. That's very cool. Um, for me, it is trying to get through the many the many levels of health insurance resistance and playing their games so I can get some actual treatment. I found out a few weeks ago that I have some osteoarthritis in my hip, like a stage 3. So it's like there's cysts, it's all, and that probably has been going on. It's progressed pretty quickly. So now I'm limping all the time. And it's like, so, here we go again into the medical system. In the middle of 6 weeks of PT, but they won't tell me if I need one session a week or if it's just PT over 6 weeks. We'll find out when they deny me for whatever they want to deny me for, and then I spend more hours on the phone. So it's not just the physical part to overcome, but really it's more about the going back and forth between the clinic and the medical mutual. They haven't made it easy this summer for other things.
So I suppose here I'm also going to go musically. I have a keyboard sitting behind me that I have needed to repair, and I just got the parts that I needed to repair the keyboard. So I think the challenge is there's a couple of challenges there. I've never repaired a keyboard before, and that's something, right? I've sort of like, built my own computers and computers for other people, and so I'm familiar with the electronic, parts of all this, but I've never opened up a keyboard before, and so that's going to happen, and try to replace some of the pads and replace some of the keys. It's an older instrument at this point, probably like, maybe almost like a 20-year-old keyboard, even though it looks really it still looks really good. But importantly, it's not something that you can just kind of like go and like get a piano tuner. Like back in the day, like I remember like back in the day, like I had a piano, family piano, and we'd have the piano tuner come over, dude would tune the piano. Oh, sounds great, right?
Stu.
Um,
Ours was named Stu.
hmm, I can't remember ours.
Cringy.
Um, but yeah, so I could take it into right, like an equipment place, like something like Guitar Center, but I'm not sure how many people there are able to repair 20-year-old Yamaha keyboards, right? I probably know as much as they do, and I'm just spending sort of like extra money there. But then it's to, of course, right, like hop back and play and really commit to playing. I think one of the challenges that I'm currently experiencing is that some of the internal pads are actually like the volume is low on them, and so I sort of like have to hit them harder, which is not conducive for good playing practices. And so I think that's kind of like my next thing. I wish that I had time like during this actual semester right now to fix this stuff, but I'm planning over Thanksgiving break. Maybe that's what I do on Thanksgiving. That's a little less fun than maybe, well, I mean, at the same time, it actually sounds like maybe it could be more fun than attending a certain family gathering. But um, hope that hope that none of them are listening to this podcast. But uh, yeah, that's probably what I would say my next kind of challenge is going to be is getting back to repairing a keyboard and then right like hopping back into playing daily.
I wish I had some nice life aspirational goal, like I'm going to learn how to play piano, or I'm going to, learn how to paint or do something like that. To this question, I don't. This question didn't emerge from any particular place inside of me. It was just thinking about if I'm not doing work all the time, what would be something that I would need to learn that's not work related whatsoever. And uh, I thought originally, because I found a gift card for something that somebody gave me that was like cooking classes, and they have the just different places where you can go and spend a day learning how to cook. And I thought, that. But more practically, and there is a piece of software called Ecamm, and all of the YouTube influencers and people who do real serious YouTube stuff are using Ecamm, and there's lots of wonderful benefits to it in terms of cutting cameras and putting three people on a screen instead of one at a time, or the whole group, which are options basically in Zoom. So I have a subscription to Ecamm. It costs $40 a month. I've had it for about 6 months now and have not touched it. So I would like to learn how to do Ecamm. Had a friend of mine take me on a weekend for about an hour or two and go through all of the basics. But, the rubber has to hit the road. I have to do a show using Ecamm sometime. So y'all might be guinea pigs and hopefully it'll work. If not, well, it's just not going to work. I'll try it again and I'll learn some more with it. But that would be the non-academic, non-related job challenge that I would do would be to learn Ecamm. So yeah, that's what came to mind. Past the cooking classes, past I'm going to learn to paint. Ecamm, I think I actually have a chance of learning how to do painting and piano, probably not. So that's it for standard questions right now. And I have a final shot question actually contributed by Stephanie months ago. I found it in the pool of questions. What country would you move to?
Well, this has been in the works for years, as listeners know. I will go to Canada, Ontario, Canada. That is the retirement destination.
Yes, after recently kind of putting together a matrix of what countries would have things that I'd be looking for regarding job opportunities for our family, healthcare to provide what we need, the two, and also maybe being accepting of our people in some way, but that's also important. But it came out to be where Canada would be the easiest transition and would have a lot of those. But, everything else aside, if like politics and everything else was not an issue as far as like surrounding politics, not politics, well, of the country too. But it's hard to find any country where I don't have issues with politics to some degree. But the Netherlands. So it was either the Netherlands or Canada. So that was it.
Yeah, the United States feels a little bit like my family's Thanksgiving party right now. So I'm thinking about like I've been having this question this week, and it's not like I don't think this is going to happen. And also I'm like, wait a minute, like I'm allowed to do this. I am allowed to do this if I want. Um, so some things that have been coming up, Denmark, Netherlands, Finland, Norway, kind of like, why do like I want to just pick one, but also like there's four of them. Maybe I could just live in all four
Well,
at
Norway's not
once.
part of it, but of the Schengen district. But you get like the EU passport, but then if you get the Schengen visa, then you can like Norway's not included, but like all of those other countries are, and plus many, many more.
There we go.
New stuff I learned for no reason whatsoever this past week.
This is a tough one for me because I have a love affair with Turkey, and I would say Turkey, but Turkey's politics is pretty screwed up right now too. And so I would feel 20 years ago, 15 years ago, Turkey. With the change in the politics there, I would feel it would be very strange to live there. So I might be sleeping on Elliott's couch in Ontario. Canada seems interesting, although it doesn't seem like it's a move, like it feels like I'm really getting away. So the next step were those countries that many of you mentioned, the Netherlands, Finland, Norway, Denmark, those countries would be an option. I think that would be kind of fun to move to. Germany, I know enough German maybe to get by, or at least I can get by with it. So that might be another option. So those are my choices for what country would I move to. Well, maybe you have some ideas for countries you'd like to move to. I'm glad you're listening to this podcast. Thanks to the firing squad, Mitch, Stephanie, Elliott, for joining us. And this has been a great show and fun time to get together. Look for some of these characters on their podcasts on the podtalk.net. You can find more about them on the podtalk.net. I've moved everything over to that website. So one website to rule them all the podcasts, both ones that are active and ones that are archived. Make sure to check out the Tech Savvy Professor podcast hosted by Eric Perry, who's had a really bad week. Mm-hmm. And it was followed by him getting sick this weekend. So he's not joining us on this episode. But we do the Tech Savvy Professor. Hopefully he'll be back, and he thinks he'll be back on Tuesday to record that. And also I do a podcast called Vision Profiles, a podcast about Apple Vision Pro. Just started one recently called the Old Mac Gang, which are guys and women. That's why it's called the gang. We're opening this up, who have been Mac users for years, and now they're seasoned citizens. And we have a tendency to get ignored when it comes to technology. So the show is a short show. We record live on Wednesday nights, and it has people age ranged 67 to 87. On the panel talking about issues that are related to Mac users who are seasoned citizens. You can find out all about this on the podtalk.net. Our music theme is from Menage a Quad, Real Swing Shet. That's it for this episode of Circular Firing Squad. Ready, fire, aim.